Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, or Tank12, however you want to call me. I don't really care. And today we're back in patch 9.20.1 and we're taking a look at the new tier 10 British heavy tank that is hitting the live servers somewhere in October, I think. And it's called the Super Conqueror. So, if you remember previously, up until 9.20, the Brits had the FE215B as their top tier 10 heavy tank. But the FE215B was completely different from the Conqueror, thus making gameplay very different and making it a very unique tier 10 heavy tank, or actually a unique heavy tank in that kind of line, because the turret was based on the back. Now obviously you're asking yourself, well, what is going to happen to the FE215B? And if you haven't heard by now, I'm just going to repeat it once more. It's going to be replaced by this vehicle, but it will remain as a tier 10 special vehicle, just like the AMX Foch 155, which I managed to get before they released patch 9.20, which happened in August this year. I think early August, if I'm correct, or end of July. But let's move on. Today we want to focus on this vehicle and we want to see the differences that this tank has to the FE215B, which is still in the game, and the Conqueror, since this is the continuation of the Conqueror series. So, let's first admire this little vehicle and all the details it has to it. It's a very, very nice tank. The very first thing that we should consider is to take a look at the Conqueror once it's fully upgraded. I actually have just unlocked the Conqueror and fully upgraded, and you can see that it does look very, very similar to the Super Conqueror, since they are pretty much the same tank. The only difference from the looks at first is that the Super Conqueror does have a little bit more of additional armor up on the front, the top part of the tank, and that the turret over here, the cupola, the hatch, is a little bit different from the Super Conqueror, since that one is rounded, the other one is kind of edge-shaped, has more edges. That is very, very important to note, because this cupola on the Conqueror can be penetrated by higher caliber guns and same tier vehicles, because you do have kind of an angle here if you shoot at it, the flat surface there. But on the Super Conqueror, that is a little bit different. Since it's rounded over here, it's almost impossible to penetrate that spot, thus making the third part one of the, I think, most amazing part of this vehicle. But before we talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, let's just compare these three vehicles. Okay, so we're gonna start with firepower once more, and you can see firepower wise, the Super Conqueror has the advantage here with 730 points, average damage per shot with 400, but we have to configure that one real fast, that the Conqueror has the same statistics, the same gun at least, the same equipment, or the highest equipment that you can put on any of those vehicles. So average penetration is everywhere the same. Every one of these tanks is using the 120mm gun. They're not exactly the same on the FE215B and the Super Conqueror or the Conqueror, but they do have the almost the same characteristics with slight differences. Like obviously pen is the same, damage is the same as well, dispersion is the same, but with the aim time, the FE215B does have a little bit of an edge with 1.7 seconds aim time, and those 0.3 seconds can make a difference sometime to be able to put a shot into the enemy tank on the other side. So you can see pretty much the same statistics. Average pen is the same. Rate of fire is the highest on the Super Conqueror with 7.82 rounds per minute. And that is a very, very big increase to the Conqueror with 5.54 rounds per minute. And you really see that with the reload time. 7.68 seconds per shot. That is very, 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 very good. Especially if you compare it to, if you look at my crew, I do not have the best crew since, well, it is a test server. I didn't retrain my crew from the Carnivan. And if you have brothers in arms on this vehicle, if you use premium consumables, if you have, I don't know, like jack of all trades and additional like other kind of other traits on your crew, you'll be able to get that reload time even down to maybe 7 seconds or maybe even less. That is very, very, very nice. If you're in this tank, you obviously have very, very good rate of fire. Very high DPM as well, as you can see, with 3,126 damage that you can dish out per minute. Dispersion is the very best at 0.03 at 100 meters. The aim time is very close to the FV215B, but the FV215B does have a little bit of a advantage there. And the gun elevation and depression angles are exactly the same on all three of those tanks. And I can say 7 degrees of gun depression is not very good. You will need some more gun depression to be able to use this turret very effectively. But we'll get to the survivability right now. So survivability wise, hit points wise, it does lack the hit points that the FV215B was provided with, 2,500, which is a very, very nice hit points pool. 2,350, it's more than the Conqueror, but you know, it's like the IS-7. Hull armor wise, it does have the same hull armor, at least the front, as the Conqueror. Better turret armor with 279 millimeters on the front, and it's almost impenetrable. I can show you that in the gameplay afterwards. I have a scene where you can just see how Jagdpanzer E100s with heat ammunition are bouncing off the front of our turret. Absolutely a beast in a hull down position. If you do manage to work with your gun depression and gun elevation. Then it does have better side armor with 101 millimeter, which is not amazing still, but it will allow you to side scrape better than with the Conqueror. With the 76 millimeters of the side armor, some tanks were able to, you know, still overmatch the armor and thus penetrate the side of your vehicle. The best armor on all of these tanks, at least hull-wise, does still belongs to the FV215B with 76 millimeters armor on the rear. Thus, high explosive ammunition will probably not be able to penetrate your ass. On pretty much very, very different history or very different story on the Super Conqueror and the Conqueror with 38 millimeters on the rear. Not very good. So 152 millimeters on the side turret on the FV215B and 101 millimeters on the rear. A turret that is extremely powerful. Almost the same turret as the Conqueror, but it does have a little bit extra armor on the side, which makes it that much more powerful at bouncing shots. Not the same on the Conqueror and the Super Conqueror with 88 and 69 millimeters on the rear, but it does have a very nice flat shape, which makes it very difficult to penetrate from the side if you do not have a flat surface. Mobility wise, well, the first thing we can get out of the way is that speed wise, 34.3 kilometers is the same on every vehicle. The only big difference that you have is that the FV215B has a much better traverse speed of 39.63 degrees per second, which allows you to turn around much faster than the Super Conqueror or the Conqueror. And I think that is definitely one of the things that you have to keep in mind. Concealment wise, obviously with the crew and camo net that I've fitted on, It's a little bit better right now, and spotting wise it's also better because of the crew and the equipment that I have on. But standard view range is about 410 meters. So all in all, there are some slight differences, but these vehicles in statistics are very similar. The big difference though is that the FE215B has the turret on the back, which formerly allowed you to really use this tank in a side scraping position extremely well, which will now probably be a little bit harder to do in the Super Conqueror. So gameplay wise, it changes a lot. It is much more like the Conqueror and much less like the FE215B. The big difference obviously here is the rate of fire and the DPM that you have now on the Super Conqueror, which will allow you to, well, if you have a good position, to do a lot of damage, much more damage than the Conqueror and more damage than the FE215B. But you do lose the kind of sense of side scraping and special part that you have with the FE215B, because the FE215B is very prestigious. People really enjoy this tank. It's not an HD model yet. I hope they will make it into a HD model soon. But the big difference is just that this tank was a god in a side scraping position, you know, in a good position where you could hide your lower plate with the turret on the back. You could just side scrape very nicely. That is unfortunately falling off on the Super Conqueror, but you do more damage if you manage to penetrate your shots. You have a better rate of fire, and thus you have better DPM. So I would say, to see how this tank performs in battle, we should definitely check out some gameplay. So I'll see you guys in the game. So I think it does fit that the very first game I had in the Conqueror should be the very first, well, gameplay that I'm going to be adding here, because, well, the Conqueror itself, the Super Conqueror, does not play very differently from the normal Conqueror, since it's just a little bit a buffed up version of the Conqueror. So if you do own the Conqueror by now, if you own the British tank line, if you do have the FE215B, you will actually get the FE215B as well as the premium variant of a tier 10 vehicle, which is, I think, a very nice trait that they are not completely taking the tank out of the game. But at the same time, the Super Conqueror, as you can see right here, does suffer the very similar issues that, or problems that, the Conqueror does have. And one of these problems is definitely for me that the ammo racking problem still consists in this vehicle. At least your ammo rack does take some very annoying hits. But as you can see right here, the rate of fire on this vehicle is just absolutely amazing. We're working away on this Type 5 Heavy with standard AP rounds. They do have a pen of about 259mm of armor, and if you aim at those weak spots correctly, as I'm doing right here, you can see that you can just work your way through these other vehicles. Now, obviously 2350 HP is, well, the, I would say, standard HP pool for a tier 10 heavy tank. Maybe one that is decently armored but not extremely well armored. I mean, if you look at the T110E5, the T110E5 doesn't have much more HP than the Super Conqueror. But right now you can see that with the 34 kilometers per hour, you're able to go around quite easily. The gun handling is quite good, although you do notice the slower aim time of about 0.3 seconds compared to the FE215B. And sometimes, especially if you're not in a close range engagement as I am right here, you will miss those. You will miss the additional, or you probably will dislike the additional 0.3 seconds it takes to get a full circle. And right here, actually on close to mid-range, this vehicle does perform fairly well. Although we've only been hit about 2 times, no actually 3 times, 2 times by the Type 5, you can see that this tank does not hold up very well once it's hit, once its lower plate is visible, and especially once you give them a little bit of a side angle that they can penetrate your side armor. It doesn't take a lot. This vehicle is just not as heavily armored as other heavy tanks. So that is one thing that you have to keep in mind if you're playing British vehicles, British tanks, heavy tanks especially. So right here we have 434 HP left, and you can see with the rate of fire that we're just working through the enemy tanks. We're not really paying that much attention to our HP pool here. That is exactly, I think, the reason why I'm going to be dying fairly soon. Yeah, exactly. But you can see 4,161 damage dealt in a very, very quick succession. If you can hide your lower plate and your side armor, you can do quite a lot of damage in this vehicle. So let's see a game where this tank actually can use its turret to its advantage. We've taken a look at the amazing DPM that this vehicle has. Now we're taking a look at the turret armor, which is one of the strengths of this vehicle. Pretty much the biggest strength of the tank next to the high DPM. And this is a very nice hold down position in on the map Engelberg, I think, which is the new Grand Battle mode. Now obviously high explosive and heat rounds with more than 300 millimeters of pen might still be able to penetrate you, but you can see we're bouncing stuff on our turret, which is quite fascinating. Very high caliber rounds, and that is the main feature, that is one of the main strengths of this tank. It does have this amazing frontal turret armor, which allows you to crest the ridge, some ridge lines, and take hits, premium rounds from a lot of enemy tanks. Now obviously you're not invincible. Some shots will still be able to go through, but many of those rounds still bounce off the top of our turret. So all in all, the Super Conqueror. I've played about 20 or 30 games in this tank now, and I have to be honest, I would have enjoyed to see the FE215B in action as well. Since I haven't unlocked it yet, I couldn't really play it. But regarding the Conqueror that I have, and the way this kind of tanks plays exactly or very similar to the Conqueror, it's a very decent tier 10 heavy tank that has a very, very nice way of dealing a lot of damage. The high DPM allows you to take tanks apart very, very quickly, and the accuracy in close to mid ranges is very or fairly good. Now obviously for longer ranges and regarding the aim time, the FE215B does have some advantages, like the additional HP that it does have, 2500. It does have a better traverse speed, and the turret is on the back for side scraping. All these little features. Well, if you're playing this tank correctly, you can dish out a lot of damage since the turret armor is very strong. The hull armor is not too bad. It's just, it's a very standard kind of hull armor with its very standard weak spots. The lower plate is obviously a weak spot. The side armor and the rear are not thick enough to protect you from incoming shells. You don't have any spaced armor, so you have to be very careful once you get flanked, or if you are in an open engagement with another tank and they are able to shoot your lower plate. But other than that, I think this tank, in the right environment, if you play it into a position where you can use your turret to your advantage, or where you can actually engage tanks that have a lower rate of fire and maybe less DPM than you can just pretty much dish out the shells in such a quick succession that you can take care of a lot of especially a lot of vehicles, especially if you're in a very good spot, like right here. Obviously, this is the test server, so things are a little bit different. People play a little bit more recklessly here, but if you do have this very nice position and you can go hull down and just let the rate of fire speak for yourself, you can do a lot of damage with this vehicle, and that is, I think, the reason why I like it. The mobility wise, it's the same as the Conqueror. 34 kilometers is not amazing, but it's not bad either. So you'll be able to go around the map and dish out damage. And I think I'm very much looking forward to getting this tank eventually when I finish my grind on the Conqueror. But I think it's always nice to have the FV215B and the Conqueror. So if you manage to pick up the 215B, you can actually compare it eventually eye to eye with this tank. And I think that is a very nice feature that I definitely want to do eventually. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this little preview of this vehicle. If you did, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.